This conference will now be recorded.
And away we go. So today we're talking about interim effective dates. It's one of the questions we get most on the LIH service request board, is people needing help diagnosing, when should an IR be effective. So we have a lot of examples to go through, as well as a couple tools to kind of help in figuring that out. So let's jump in. So first, IR effective dates are mainly dependent on two things. So is rent going up or is rent going down? The complicating factor to that is whether we're processing the IR timely or not. The second factor is, did the tenant timely report it? So tenants have 30 days to report changes. Back in the day, it used to be 10. It's been 30 now for several years. So within 30 days, they have to report a change. So one of the attachments I sent you was this IR effective dates kind of flow chart. And we'll look at it here in a second. I also printed out color copies and put them in your boxes here at Central. So you can tape them to your wall or give them to your dog, whatever works for you. I'm kind of a visual person, so this I think helps me, but whatever works for you, use it. And so it's really just starting right here in the middle. Did the tenant report the change timely? If yes, then you go left. If no, then you go right. Then is the rent increasing or is it decreasing? Oh shoot, I have this is rent increasing on here twice. So I need to fix that. So I'll fix that and resend it out to y'all. So if rent is increasing.
No, I think that's right, Brian.
Oh, it is right.
It is right.
Yes, it is right. Thank you. All right, so let's go left. Did the tenant report timely? Yes. If so, is the rent increasing? If yes, then did we process this timely? Then if yes, then the IR is effective the first of the month after we can give a 30-day notice. If we didn't process it timely, then the IR is effective the first of the month after the action that caused the error. And here in these orange, these called hexagons, is whether you'll need an adjustment ticket or not. If we go the other way, did the tenant report the change timely? No. Is rent increasing? Let's say yes. The IR is effective the first of the month after the action that caused the interim. If we're processing it timely, then the household may need a repayment agreement because they owe all that back rent, the increased rent from their cert. So as we go through these examples, I've included the part of the chart that we're on to hopefully help that make sense. There's also another tool, which is the IR effective date calculator. We gave it a prominent spot right on our intranet page. It's in that left column of databases and other links. IR effective date calculator. Basically, you put your dates in, you answer a couple questions, and then it'll tell you what the IR effective date is. And we'll go through an example using that as well. So let's start looking at examples. And here we're gonna have to play time traveler a little bit. I tried to leave the dates the same in terms of when the tenant reported something. What changes is our date. So what is today is the key question in all these examples. So we're pretending that today is July 19th. A household reported on July 6th that they stopped working at Taco Cabana, and it's verified that the termination date was 6/26. So first off, rent is decreasing, right? They stopped a job, so rent's gonna go down. Second, the tenant reported timely. They would have given us an update form on 7/6. We verified that they stopped working June 26th. That's within 30 days, so they reported timely. And as a result, the IR is effective on July 1st, first of the month that caused the action. So they stopped working June 26th. They're going to get an IR effective July 1st. No adjustment ticket is going to be needed. The certs are going to do all the work here. So once you get that July 1st IR signed, and then once it gets posted, you'll see an adjustment on the ledger, that removes the amount that they were originally charged and charge them the new amount based on that employment no longer being listed on their 5.9. And on that flow chart, here's how we got there. Tenant reported timely, rent is not increasing, so the IR is effective the first of the month after the action which caused the interim. Questions on example number 1? All right. So here we're saying it's still a rent decrease. It was timely reported, but we did not process it timely. Untimely processing, that's what we're changing. And so today is today. So if a resident reported on July 6th that they stopped working at Taco Cabana, we verified that their termination date was June 26th. We're not processing this timely. It's been 3 months, right? Over 3 months since they turned in that update form. In this one case, it actually doesn't matter. So rent is decreasing. The tenant did report it timely. IR is still effective 7/1, and we still don't need an adjustment ticket. The only thing here is there's a bigger adjustment caused by the cert. The ledger is going to see this big swing where we remove all these charges that were previously made and then replace them with new charges, which reflect that they're no longer working at Taco Cabana. It may seem like, hey, let's just wait on these. They're the least important. We don't want to do that. One, we don't want to see that big ledger swing that we just saw. Two, I mean, this household would have had a real hard time paying their rent based off of, an employment that they no longer have. We could have sent out NOTs that we shouldn't have. All we needed was a cert to lower their rent. So these we need to stay on top of, even though you don't see any change in the effective date. Even though you're not having to do an adjustment ticket, still want to stay on top of them. And let's go ahead and look at this in that IR effective date calculator. And I'm going to pull this up just so y'all see again where I got it. So here's our department intranet page, right? And we looked at the managers meeting last week. IR effective date calculator is right here on the left. So, and I'm going to kind of switch back and forth here. We can fill this out together. So, when did the action occur that prompted the new cert? Just shout it out. When did the action occur which caused this interim? Santa knows, I can see it in her eyes.
6/26.
6/26. 6/26 is the date that they stopped working. When was the change reported?
7/6.
7/6. Will the change cause the rent to increase or decrease?
Decrease. Decrease.
Decrease. And is the cert being processed timely by property staff? Donnell and
No.
Amanda are shaking their head no.
No.
When's the notice of rent change being delivered? So if we're working on this cert now, we can say today, 10/13/22, and outspits our effective date of 7/1/22. We can change this to match the example from the first one that we looked at, where we were processing it in July. We can see it still doesn't change. I'll just point out here that this is a judgment call. Here we say generally within 30 days. Now, if it took you 31, does that mean you're not processing it timely? No, not necessarily. If it took 5.5 weeks, but you sent out 2 VOEs, you sent 2 7-day letters to the household, you tried everything you could to verify, and it just took that long, that could still be being processed timely. I think once you start getting into the 2-month and beyond range, it's a no-brainer. No, we didn't process this timely. Any questions on this interim effective date calculator? Cool. This is one Google Sheet that everybody has access to. So in the off chance that anyone is in there with someone else, and you should be able to see their icon up here at the top right, just wait for them to finish and hop out. You can use this clear form button, which will then just clear everything out and give you a nice new sheet to start with. All right, let's keep going with some more examples. So here we're looking at a rent decrease still. This one is untimely reported, timely processed. So today is today. It's 10/13/22. The household reports on October 6th that they stopped working at Taco Cabana, and we verified that the head of household's termination date was June 26th. So rent is decreasing, right? They still lost a job. They reported it untimely, however, right? It happened on June 26th. They didn't tell us about it until October 6th. The IR is effective the first of the month after it's reported. So even though they stopped working June 26th, they don't get kind of, credit, for lack of a better word, for that until an 11/1 IR. They still owe the higher amount for July, August, September, and October. We still don't need an adjustment ticket. They owe all that back rent, all the higher rent from before. It's just that their lower rent doesn't take effect until November 1st. Here again, did the tenant report timely? They did not. Is it increasing? No. It's effective the first of the month after it was reported. So here, let's look at a situation where both happen, right? It's untimely reported and untimely processed. And this is a rent decrease. So today is December 13th. So we're kind of skipping into the future. December 13th, we're processing this. They reported on 10/6 that they stopped working. It wasn't, once it was verified, we found out their termination date was June 26th. So rent is decreasing. The tenant reported untimely. IR is effective the first of the month after it's reported. So even though we're doing this in December, we'd still go back, but we're not going back the full way. Still no adjustment ticket. And then the lower rent will take effective 11/1. Looking at all these examples of rent decreases, nowhere here is there an adjustment ticket. With a lower, when rent is decreasing, the cert should do all the work. It lowers the household's rent on its own as of the effective date that you make that cert. The only time we're looking for adjustment tickets when there's is when there's a rent increase. That's only in certain circumstances. So if rent is decreasing, no adjustment ticket. If rent is increasing, who's responsible? That's the question. Is it us? Is it the household? Or is it a little bit of both? We'll get to those examples next. Clear so far though on the rent decreases?
Brian, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So on the example that you were giving where you did the calculator and it took it to 7/1 as the effective date?
Yes.
I guess, why is that? Because it's up to them to report, right? It's their responsibility. They didn't
Yes.
report until 7/6. So I thought it would have been effective the first of the following month, which would have been 8/1.
Here they reported timely in that example where we use this calculator. So it happened June 26th. They reported within 30 days. And so it's almost like they get credit. So it happened. So it's effective the first of the month after the action that caused the change. if we change this up a little bit and let's say, let's look at like that third example. So June 26th is when it happened. When was it reported? Let's say 10, I don't think it'll let me do a future date, 10/13/22. Rent's going down, then it's going to be effective 11/1.
So it's because they reported timely within the 30 days, but it was still after the first of the month of July.
Yes. As long as it's timely, even if it kind of hops over into the next month, as long as it's within 30 days, that's considered timely reporting.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to tell on myself or anyone else, but we could have done some of these wrong.
That's all right. We're as long as we're doing it the same moving forward.
Is this a new change, or this has been going like in effect for a while?
This is how it's been for a while.
Oh.
The mid 90s, I think.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
But
and I'll
not
tell you, this isn't.
right?
Let me say a couple of things. One, this isn't HACA policy; it's HUD policy. It does come from Chapter 7, and what is the HACA policy part of it is we used to say 10 days to report, and we moved it to 30 days to report. And if I recall why we did that is we had a lot of folks that were hesitant to report until they had at least gotten their first check. You know, like, hey, there was confusion. Do I report after hire or do I report after first check? And so we were having to do a lot of certs with repayment agreements, and we were calling it untimely reporting. So we decided, okay, instead of 10 days, we'll do 30 days. And so that kind of alleviated all of it. But it's always been, and I think that may be why the 10-day to 30-day change is where y'all are maybe kind of having trouble wrapping your brain around the first of the month after the action. But I can tell you, you know what's funny, y'all? We've already trained on this chart before, and we've trained on the IR effective date calculator before. And I told Brian, I think we need to train on it again, because I don't think folks remember that we've trained on this and these resources have been available, because he created these months ago and we already did training. So we decided we would reboot it. So just so you know, the first of the month after the action for timely reporting, that's Chapter 7. It's been there of the 4350. It's been there for quite some time. So all that's telling me is it's good that we're talking about it, and it's good that we're going, over it, and keep asking questions, and let's keep rolling through.
So I think I may have, I've always, the way it was for us, and I could be wrong, but I agree with Cece. If they report mid-month, it's the 30 days from the date of the, when the employment ended or began if it's timely. But the date of the action is 30 days after that, whether it's it's the following month if it's a rent decrease, and if it's 30 days if it's a rent increase. So I remember in one manager's meeting that we were given the big no-no for doing retroactive IRs, and this would look like a retro IR because it's 7/1 instead of 8/1.
We do retro IRs every day. And we've done retro IRs every day since we converted to RAD. Like, part of the process is we do have to, just kind of the way these play out. If I reported now, like right now, if I lost my job today, I have 30 days to report that. So I could report it November 10th. I'd still be in compliance, and my rent goes down 11/1. So yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I think Brian hit the nail on the head with let's talk about this. And I'm gonna say, since there seems to be confusion, I want to just encourage everybody, use this flow chart. I know at first it looks intimidating, but it's like really just walks you through. And please use the IR effective date calculator, because it really does work.
Ready to look at increases? Some apprehensive nods. All right. So we're sticking with today. Today is October 13th. Household reported on 9/16 that they started working at Taco Cabana. It's verified the head of household start date was 8/24/22. So rent is increasing, right? They have a new job. The tenant reported timely because it's within 30 days. If we were to send out the notice of rent change today, then the IR is effective the first of the month after a 30-day notice can be given. So it's mid-October right now. We send out a 30-day notice. That would be mid-November. IRs are always effective on the first of the month. So that means this IR would be effective 12/1. The resident isn't responsible for any increase until 12/1. Their lower rent is going to continue to be charged for October and November. That's all they have to pay. HUD's going to make up the difference. So it's not until 12/1 where the higher rents and lower half take effect. With this situation, timely reported and timely processing, there's no adjustment ticket either. The new rent is just effective when it's effective. The tenant owes it then, and HUD will pay the lower amount then. So similar-ish example, rent increase again. The resident timely reported, but we did not process it timely. So here we're saying that today is December 13th, so we're moving into the future. They reported on 9/16 that they started working at Taco Cabana. We verified and they started 8/24. So again, rent is increasing with the new job. The tenant reported timely, so within 30 days. In this case, the IR is effective 9/1/22. Here we would need an adjustment ticket because the tenant did what they were supposed to. We didn't do what we were supposed to. We have to write off the difference for September, October, and November. Here again, we have a rent increase that's not timely reported by the tenant, but we're processing it timely. So today is today. Household reported on 10/12 they started working at Taco Cabana. When we verify it, the start date was August 24th. So again, new job, rent's increasing. The tenant did not report timely because it's not within 30 days, right? They were hired 8/24 and today is October 13th. That IR is going to be effective September 1st, 2022. So they lose their right to a 30-day notice. And similar to the decrease, it's effective the first of the month after the action that caused it. So because they started working on 8/24, the IR is effective 9/1. Here, there's still no adjustment ticket. The resident's responsible. And when that cert hits the ledger, you're going to see all these additional rent charges that are reflecting that new job. We may need a repayment agreement if they can't pay it off all immediately. Questions on this example? All right, and then here's an example where everybody messed up. So today is December 13th. The household reported on 10/12 that they started working. It's verified that the head of household start date was August 24th. So it's been 2 months and we haven't done anything. The resident reported about a month and a half late. Rent is increasing. Who's responsible is kind of the big question. There's a little bit of gray area here. What I would say is the resident's responsible for September through November, and then we're responsible for December and January. If we're processing the cert in mid-December, we'd get out a 30-day notice and the resident would owe the higher amount for sure beginning February 1st. These are situations where you can definitely open an allied service request, talk to your CD, and let's talk it through and figure out who owes what. Questions on this one? Let's plug this into the calculator just so you can see what it looks like. Y'all help me fill it out again. When did the action occur? That's right, everyone. August 24th. When was it reported?
10/12.
10/12. Thank you. The change caused rent to increase or decrease?
Increase.
And is the cert being processed timely by staff?
No.
We can say here, we're going to deliver it. So for an increase, it's also going to ask you these two additional questions just to make sure we actually do need an interim. So let's say before the job, their income was $600 a year. And after the job, it's 15,000. Whoops, 15,000, not 150. They'll tell you 9/1 is when it should be effective. And we'll need to work out who's responsible. Questions? Ready to talk about gross rents? Anything else on interims?
I'm just going to give a plug for timely processing, which I know is really hard right now with like the gaps we have in staffing. But just to say that when we can't get IRs done timely, you know, Brian, you hit the nail on the head with we can be giving out notices of termination when we really shouldn't because rent should have been lowered, or we can be in situations where we're having to do a ledger adjustment and take a loss when we really want to be holding a resident accountable. The other thing I'll give the plug on is y'all know you know your families that have, it seems like an interim like every other month, and it's a lot of work, but if you aren't staying on top of it, like the interims start to stack up and it can get really confusing on effective dates. And then it also gets hard to hold the resident accountable. So what I kind of wanted to say is, like, if you guys can see it coming, you're watching your cert sheets, you know what your workloads are more than we do. You know, I don't know the 20 tasks that you're always juggling. But if you're looking at it at something and saying like, hey, I know this needs to be done and I know I can't get to it, like I want to encourage y'all to talk with your CD and reach out to me, and we can see what kind of a lifeline or help we can get you. Just because we know, like, again, it's kind of like the domino effect. So I wanted to throw that out there, that we know it's tough with staff right now and capacity. But we also know your budgets are really tight and we don't want to be writing off thousands of dollars if I can kind of plug somebody in to work certs and we can hold a resident accountable and get into like a repayment agreement.
Last chance on interim questions. You'll never be able to ask another one again. Just kidding. Okay, let's talk gross rents. So just a reminder, we talked about this at the at the managers meeting last month, but there's a couple of things we wanted to add and make sure that we're clear. So gross rent does really two things fundamentally. It updates the UA amount and it increases the contract rent. And that's as of a clear effective date. Each property has a HAP contract, which is our contract with HUD to do what we do, and HUD's contract to pay us money to make up the difference. The anniversary of that HAP contract is when the gross rent change happens. So we have one property that's in August, 4 in November, and then the majority are in December. The November gross rents are live now. Gaston's was done several months back. Christian will be working on the 12-1 properties throughout the rest of this month and early into next month. So if you, unless you're Gaston, you have a gross rent that either just happened or is about to happen. I just said that. What's key to know with the gross rent certification is that's all it's doing. It's just updating the UA and the contract rent. And it's doing that as of a place in time. So whatever the certification was at the time that the gross rent is effective, it's taking that TTP, applying the new UA and applying the new contract rent to get the new tenant rent amount, which is the amount on the ledger, and the new HAP amount that HUD pays. The issue is that if you're creating a retroactive certification that's effective immediately prior to the gross rent itself, then we're going to need a gross rent correction. In this example, if a tenant had a TTP of 500 on their most recent cert, let's say it's August 3rd move-in, and then that TTP will be used to calculate rent and HAP with the new contract rent. But if then there's a new certification effective between August 3rd and the gross rent effective date, that means we're going to have to update the gross rent to reflect those new amounts. So anytime you're working on a retroactive cert, think through whether you need a gross rent correction. You almost always do. Really, the only situation where you wouldn't need one is if you end up having another full cert that's effective on the effective date of your gross rent. So for example, for Thurman, whose anniversary is November, if they created a 9/1/22 IR that would change the TTP, they would need an 11/1/22 gross rent correction, unless they're also doing an 11/1 IR or 11/1 AR or 0 HAP IC. So let's look at an example here, and we're kind of hopping months. We're kind of skipping forward in time. So for this household Maya, we see that they have this move-in. It's effective August 3rd. When Christian goes in to create the gross rent, that gross rent is going to be based on this certification. And we see that here. We see a TTP of 53 on the move-in. Then we see a TTP of 53 on the gross rent. The UA changed from 54 to 55, and the contract rent went from 760 to 778. So that changed their tenant rent from -$1 to -$2, and it changed the HAP amount from 761 to 780. All this was done. At this point, Christian would send you out an email saying, hey, all your gross rent certs are ready to sign. They're all here in Laserfish. They're all in their own individual cert folders within the unit folders. They're all in pending signature. If, however, we needed to go back and create a retroactive 10/1/22 IR, we can see here it would change the TTP from $53 to $428, right? It would change the tenant rent from -1 to $374. In this situation, we absolutely need a GR-1 to make sure the correct amount of rent and HAP is charged moving forward. If we think about this from a ledger perspective, they were charged -$1, which is really Natalia's sending out a $1 check to them every month for August, September, October. If we get this cert signed, then they're going to be charged $374 retroactively for October. But then the issue is starting November 1st, they go right back to -2. We don't want that. We want the 374, or really the TTP of 428, to carry forward from November forward as well. Unless, again, there's another interim, another update form that changes that effective November 1st. So what we want to see is this. We still have our move-in. Then we have this retroactive IR, which changes their rent to 374, TTP of 428. This was the original gross rent that Christian did for 53. But we have this gross rent correction also with a TTP of 428, where their tenant rent is 373. The key here is, this household's going to need to come in and sign this IR. We need to recognize we're also going to need a gross rent correction so that they can sign both at the same time. We don't have to have them come back, and both these certs hit the ledger at the same time. So the correct amount is charged, both for tenant rent and for HAP. Jasmine had a question. Do I need a gross GR1 for all my 11-122 ARs? You do not, Jasmine. So because you have a full certification, full cert, remember, is an AR, IC, IR, or move-in. If any of those 4 certs are effective 11-1, then that's going to include the new UA and include the new contract rent. You don't need a gross rent because you have the AR that replaces it. For your 10-1 ARs, if you did a 10-1 AR and finalized it after Christian did the gross rent, you would likely need a gross rent correction. And 11-1, similar like with future months, if you have like a 12-1 AR, it already has the new UA and the new contract rent. It's already included within that cert, so you won't need one then either. It's also important to point out that this dynamic also exists for move-ins. So for any of the 11-1 properties, anyone you're moving in now, prior to 11-1, you're going to need a gross rent correction. And you want to do that while the tenant is there signing the lease so they can sign both at the same time. The best way to do that is to have them sign the 5-9 when you're signing the lease, enter those dates into Yardi. As soon as you do and you click save, Yardi's going to create that GR for you. Then you can print them out and have them sign it at the same time.
So just to clarify, it's not a correction, it's just a gross rent. So in other words, as you're doing the move-in, as soon as you finalize the move-in, Yardi will auto-generate the GR. So you're saying just make sure to get the GR signed at the same time. So that, think about like Meadowbrook, Thurmond, BTW, Lakeside. Okay. Yeah, y'all 4. You're going to be any move-ins you're doing between now and 11 and 10/31 Halloween. You're going to have both certs.
And for you 12-1 properties, once you get that email from Christian saying, hey, your gross rent is done, here's where you can find all your gross rent certs. From that point until 12-1, when your GR is effective, anytime you're moving a household in, you'll need to do this same thing. Put the dates into Yardi, click save, and then the GR will pop up, and you can print that quickly and have them sign it as well. Do I wish Yardi made this easier? Yes, I do. But that's the quickest way for you to get a gross rent. So some other tricks. One, I would say anytime you know that you're going to need a GR1, go ahead and create it, not only in Laserfish, but also, or not only in Yardi, but also in Laserfish. And I'd say mainly for Laserfish, right? So you have something to track, you have something in the future, you know that you'll need this folder. Once you have that retroactive IRA or whatever it is, right? Once you have it ready, you can go ahead and print the GR correction too, and have the resident sign both at the same time. When you create a GR1, you typically don't have to enter in the income and asset and all that kind of stuff like you would for a full cert. Once you have the full cert like you like it, the full cert is matching the calc sheet, everything looks good, then create that gross rent correction and just click the next button until you get to the end, and it should kind of pull forward all the income, asset, and expense info it needs to create the correct gross rent correction. And just like we saw with this example, we're looking for TTP to match. That's your sign that everything looks good. TTP matches the prior cert, then we're good. The only time it won't match is if you have a mixed family. And it's just because the calculation for a mixed family is different, which changes the contract rent amount. So the TTP might be slightly different if one of the household members is an ineligible non-citizen. That's the only time they shouldn't match. Any questions on that?
Hey, Brian, when it's a mixed family, the rent goes actually up.
Yes, with mixed families, rent's going to go up.
Mhm.
The reason being because contract rent goes up.
Yeah.
And they're only given a portion of that contract rent. So
Yes.
the TTP will change, and yes, it will go up. By how much depends on the makeup of the family, how many eligible citizens and how many ineligible non-citizens.
Mhm.
Any other GR questions or questions otherwise? All right. Well, thank you guys. We haven't, I think, for sure decided, but we may take November and December off from these trainings. We got a ton of stuff going on with increased annuals and AECs for our tax credit properties, and then all these gross rents you guys will have to get signed. So we may not have this. We may pick it back up in the new year. But yeah, if there's anything you want us to talk through in future trainings, please let us know. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Brian.
Have a good day.
You too.